No? You didn't. Okay, well, let me rephrase the question again, my friends. What do you think a key is when we talk about it? Three skeleton key in this story. Come on. What do you think a key is? No idea? Okay, it is like a section of where the ocean and the shore they meet. Okay, well, when you have something like that, like a cliff or something like that, that is called a key. That's why this lighthouse is located there, right? In this key. So it's a part of excuse me, of the shore. All right. So just for you to know. And that is important to understand what happens in the story. Okay. Now we have the author that is W. Jacobs. He was born in 1863 and then died in 1943. That is almost like when he was 80 years old. He was an English author and also a humorist. Okay. He is the one who wrote The Monkey's Paw. And in case you don't know what a paw is, this is the paw. Okay. Um, so you can talk about like Godzilla or Gojira in Japanese, or what is the other one? King Kong, or anything, any of those animals. They have huge paws. Okay, a cat maybe. Okay, lions. All right. So this guy W. Jacobs is primarily known for humorous maritime tales and stories of duck life. Okay. So he's always had talked about this type of issues. Okay, Jacobs achieved international immortality for this singular macabre masterpiece. Okay, um, the mastery of suspenseful atmosphere, meticulous foreshadowing, and the grim exploration of human greed and the unstoppable fate. You cannot avoid your fate, no matter what you do. Your fate is already established the moment you are born. Okay. We have the different parts of the story, right? The plot structure. Okay, we have the White family, that is Mr. and Mrs. Herbert. They reside in isolated English house. So we are in England. They live in the countryside. Okay, and then this family composed of Mr. and Mrs. Herbert, they live there. Okay. Um, there's a guy that is called Sergeant Major Morris, and he introduces a cursed paw from India. Okay, so he's the one who brings paw, this paw, and supposedly it is cursed. Okay, um, he brings that from India and bringing a warning of tragedy. All right, so that is an important element. That will be the beginning of the short story, okay? Then you have the raising action. That will be when Mr. White wishes for $200, okay? I mean, not dollars, sorry, pounds. That is the symbol of English pounds, okay? So Herbert is killed in a factory accident, all right? That is the son, okay, of Mr. and Mrs. Uh, uh, White, okay? Herbert is killed in a factory accident, and guess what happens? Well, the company compensates the family with exactly 200 pounds. That is what Mr. White wished for. Okay, so this is kind of ironic, weird, strange, right? You ask for amount of money, you get the money, but the cost is that the life of your son uh, is what I have to pay for. All right. Then you get to the climax of the story. That is when Mrs. White, that is full of grief, she's sad, depressed, then she asks for or wishes for a second wish. Okay. That is to bring Herbert back. Okay. From the dead, okay, to revive Herbert. So out of the blue, they are at home inside the house, and then they hear monstrous rhythmic knocking, okay, at the door. Then after that, right, you have the falling action, and that is when the absolute terror consumes Mr. White as he anticipates. He is able to foreshadow, he's able to foresee what is happening, right? So he anticipates the gruesome reality of the wish, while his wife races to undo the locks, okay? And finally, you have the resolution. Mr. White deploys the third wish. That is, the knocking violent ceases, an empty, ambiguous, and tragic threshold remains. Okay? So, what do you think the Mr. White or the father wished for? Okay? What is your opinion? We have the characters here. We have Mr. White, okay? That you have some characters that are round or complex, and then you have some others that are flat or simple. Mr. White is a complex protagonist. Why? Well, because he undergoes a profound psychological metamorphosis or change from casual curiosity to becoming totally paralyzed by terror. All right? Then you have Mrs. White, the sergeant, and Herbert. They all are flat characters or simple characters, okay? Well, Mrs. White exhibits extreme emotional transformation from maternal tranquility to absolute unhinged desperation. And that is why she asks, actually, for the second wish, that is to bring the son back from the dead, okay? Then you have Sergeant Major Morris, that is the one who brings this cursed paw from India, right? The archetype of the messenger and omnious warrior figure. So this is an archetype. Remember when we studied June and we talked about certain archetypes? Well, you always have an archetype, a figure of a messenger, somebody who brings good or bad omens, okay, to people, right? You have that in everything, everywhere. In religion, you have that in Christianity with the angel that appeared to the Virgin Mary. I guess you correct me if I am wrong. I don't know much about that. But this angel appears to Virgin Mary, and then he or it, the angel, I don't know, uh, breaks the news that she's pregnant. Okay. Well, we have had this figure, okay, a messenger, a figure that brings um, news, okay, from the future or from events that we don't expect, okay? He doesn't change at all. So we have Mr. and Mrs. White that are the ones who change, so they are round and complex. But then you have Herbert White, that is the son, and Sergeant Major Morris, who are flat or simple characters. So the sergeant doesn't change, and Herbert, well, he's just, let's say, an stock character, okay? He is there for a function, for an activity, for a purpose. That is the one who is going to bring the chaos, okay, the tragedy into the family by dying at the factory he was working at, okay? So Herbert White functions primarily as a tragic catalyst for the central conflict of the story, all right? Then you have the setting, okay? These are like elements of the macabre, okay? We have the setting that is a remote house in the countryside, in the English countryside, okay? Enveloped in cold, relentless rain and dark nights. So, this is something very common, my friends. Whenever we have a British short stories or movies, probably you might remember that, right? You have the famous Scottish, Irish, British countryside, full of mist or fog, forests, dark, rainy places. Okay, well, that is the perfect setting for horror, terror, or psychological and suspense stories. Okay, We have this element also that is the use of psychological tension, okay? Tense, mysterious, and wrapped heavily in Gothic horror, okay? Those are the characteristics of the setting. That's what I was telling you, right? Then you have the execution, okay? How the short story is developed, okay? Well, first, we need the narrator or the narrative voice, okay? You have a third person omniscient narrator. Remember, third person omniscient is somebody who is outside the story, okay? That is, I mean, it's not one of the main characters, is watching the whole thing and knows, in this case, omniscient knows everything that is going on, okay? This narrator cultivates suspense and dramatic irony by navigating the internal terror of multiple characters simultaneously. So that is the job this narrator has, to create this atmosphere, this feeling, this background of psychological terror, mysterious or mystery or tension, uh, dramatic irony, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so remember, we need to question everything, right? We need to question the narrator always, but in this case, it is very believable. Okay, the literary style, of course, is maybe Gothic. Okay, horror, suspense, or it can even be called classified as a psychological uh, terror horror. Okay, so we have a meticulous foreshadowing. So foreshadowing is very important because without the element of foreshadowing, that is prediction, why we don't have the rest of the story, so the story cannot unfold. That is why this literary element of predicting or foreshadowing what is going to happen is what mm, um, puts the story into motion. Okay, symbolic artifacts and pacing that steadily ratchets tension to a suffocating climax. We have all these uh, elements, okay, or themes, not themes, but style, ominous, suspenseful, dark, tragic, psychologic, okay. Then we have the artifacts of greed. Greed is ambition, right? And as you might know, ambition or greed is one of the capital or deadly sins, okay, in Christianity. Uh, you cannot wish for things that you don't have because it can be dangerous. Remember the expression, you gotta be careful what you wish for. Well, that is what happens in this story. You have the monkey's paw, okay? That is the ultimate means, the tool, the vessel of temptation. Why? Why temptation? Because through this claw, okay, or this paw, or this tool, or whatever, people are tempted to ask for wishes. And to when you ask for something like you have a genie in a bottle and then appears to you and says, okay, I can grant you three wishes. You can wish or ask for whatever you want. Usually the first thing we are going to ask for is money, that we want to be rich or something like that, okay? So that is why it's a tool of temptation, because people can easily be convinced or manipulated or driven to ask for money, or something like that. It symbolizes human greed and the fatal hubris of attempting to manipulate destiny. Again, remember what we said at the beginning of the class. In this story, we cannot manipulate fate. Fate, according to this story, is already established and given to you, and no matter what you do, you cannot escape that. Okay. We also have the environment. Okay, in this case, the storm or whatever, right? It's an environmental manifestation of encroaching chaos and the inescapable arrival of tragedy. And finally, well, you have the knocks on the door, right? An auditory manifestation of fear, repressed guilt, and the horrifying ramifications of human desires. Okay? So, what themes do we have in this story? We have the perils of greed. You also have fate versus free will, right? And this is interesting because some people believe in free will, and free will means that you are able to do whatever you want in life, that you are free to choose, you are free to decide. But, excuse me, sometimes if you apply free will, then you are going to have negative consequences in your life. So that free will is not so free. I don't know if you get my point, right? Um, and fate that I already explained to you. So you have this opposition between fate, what is already established to you from the beginning when when the moment you are born, versus free will. Okay, that is the act, the option, the opportunity that you have to decide for yourself and to do whatever you feel like in life. Okay, you also have death and grief, and finally you have the last thing that can be human curiosity. Okay, right? I don't know what happened now. Okay, now we have um, the other story. Okay, that is the three skeleton key. This was written by George Gustave Toulouse. Okay, he was born in 1877 and died in 1972. He was a French novelist and short story writer. He was famous for his adventure and suspense stories. Okay, in this story that we have for class, Three Skeleton Key, he endures, or the story endures as a masterclass in atmospheric terror. Its visceral impact amplified throughout the 20th century via famous radio dramatizations. Why? Remember that 100 years ago, okay, uh, we didn't have television. Of course, we didn't have internet, cell phones, right? So people, the only way people had to, to entertain themselves and for communication was through radio. And at least here, even in Costa Rica, up to the 1960s and 70s, because I remember when I was a little kid in the last part of the 70s and early 80s, we with my father, we used to listen to radio programs for entertainment, like soap operas and uh, comedies and whatever. So Three Skeleton Key became famous because it was repeated, broadcasted many times, okay, in the 20th century through radio dramatizations, okay? People used to perform them and play these tapes or whatever they had, okay? We have unforgiving realism merged seamlessly with suffocating psychological pressure and frenetic action sequences. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, my friends, do you think that at least three skeleton key, um, three skeleton key can be considered a magical realism story or not? This is a good practice for to review what we studied last class. Okay, three skeleton key or the monkey's paw. If you consider them as part of magical realism in literature or not, what do you think?
I would say yes.
Why, Anthony?
I remember a part that they were saying that they were describing like the boat, like uh, that had no tripulation, and they, instead of like questioning, like, there's no people there, but the boat is like self-driving. They didn't question that. They just admired that the boat was beautiful. So I
Okay.
think from what I remember in magical realism, questioning is a part of, well, questioning is not a part of magical realism when it comes to those like phenomena.
Yeah, remember that in magical realism you have a mixture of fantasy and the fantastic, and also reality, especially the setting and the characters. Okay, Valeska says, "Yes, I think the rats are my friends, are not food." What do you mean by that, Valeska? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I think the rats in a different way than they do in our reality, and the sharks too. Okay, the setting is normal and normal people. Valeska, just to review, you say, I think the rats act. That's a word because it says act. So I think it's act, right? The rats act in a different way than they do. Yes, that's a good point of view and a good perspective and a good observation, Valeska. What about the rest of you, my friends? Do you think rats can become this aggressive to the point of killing and eating people? What do you think?
I think no, they are animals. So I think that they do not have this mental capacity to think about killing a human. Unless we're in a story and we're giving human characteristics to animals, right?
Okay, Carlita, but remember the time. Okay, remember, I was forgot what I was going to say, Carla, because I was bothering. Uh, remember what was it that I was going to say, Alonso? I don't remember now. Uh, ah, remember that we have animals that can kill people and eat them. You have crocodiles, you have tigers, you have Rodrigo Chavez. I mean, jaguars. I mean, panthers. You have different types of animals, right? Even sharks and whales, right? The point I think that Valeska is stating here is that normally we don't see or we don't read or we don't hear news that present rats attacking or eating people, right? Maybe one or two they can bite you or something like that, or maybe one of them, because I have read that they have I have read about them eating fingers on people, biting, and maybe eating. Carla, I like dolphins. I'm sorry, Carlita, you're about to lose the course. Okay, Carla says dolphins too. Do not trust them. Dolphins are cool. Okay, remember, sharks are our friends. They are not food. The same thing applies to dolphins. Okay. Um, so yes, I agree with you. I agree with Anthony, and in the sense that it can be because nobody questions anything, and they take it for granted. There are legends about ghost boats, ghost ships without crew. Okay, without captains. They just uh, sail, okay, through the oceans alone. But those are like legends. They're like myths. They're like stories. Okay. Uh, but yes, so I agree. That would be for the three skeleton key. What about the other story, the monkey's paw? Do you consider that story as also part of, or you can find elements of magical realism in that story or not? Yes, no, maybe.
And a little bit confused with that. Well, in that case, like with the question of magical realism and monkey spot, like I cannot,
Why?
because I don't know if fear is like questioning, or like what part of fear, like as the emotion, plays in magical realism? Because it's
Okay.
like when we are us as human, when we fear, it's like we are like saying that thing isn't normal. I don't know if
Okay. So you think that fear can cause people to alter their concept of reality or whatever they see as real?
basically yes.
Okay. Now remember, when in doubt, ask Maria Celeste. So Maria Celeste, what do you think? Are you with us, Maria Celeste, in this session? What do you mean? I agree, but I'm not sure. You agree, or you're not sure, but they seem to think it is not normal. Okay. Okay. Let's cut the story into pieces. Okay. So you have, what element is the supernatural element in that story? There is an element in that story that is the one that brings the concept of the notion of something supernatural. Okay? What is it?
I would say the monkey paw, but
Exactly.
I, I,
The,
I would say wait. I would say like wishing, like uh, people may like wish for their dreams, but
mhm.
wishing is like magical also.
Yes, but the element that brings this capacity or this chance or whatever you want to call it of wishing for something and turning that into reality is the monkey paw. And nobody questions in the story whether the monkey paw is real or not, or why does it have the capacity of granting wishes to people or whatever, right? That's a key part. So that's a fantastical element in the story, okay? It's an element of fantasy, and nobody questions that. And the setting of the story and everything else, it's very realistic. You pay attention to the setting and the weather and everything surrounding the house. It's classical British countryside. Hmm? You have a house that seems to be real. You have real people. You even have a sergeant or whatever, right? But the events that this monkey paw causes or unfolds to the family, because it is cursed, okay, right? Um, they are not normal. So they are part of the supernatural, right? That's full of fantastic elements. I mean, you don't question that, right? Listen, if I ask Maria or Maria, I have this course reader here. If you kiss the book 3 times on a Friday morning, you're going to get excellent grades next semester. Hmm? What will you do, Mary? Mary, are you with us? Are you here? I feel your presence, but I don't see you. I will try. Okay, go ahead, Mary. You will try it. That's what you're saying. You will try. Just I feel like a clairvoyant. I have to guess what you are saying. Okay. Uh, uh, so you will try it. You will kiss the anthology, the course reader 3 times tomorrow morning, so you can get excellent. Okay. You see, no questioning, no questioning, right? But then this course reader will become what? Fantastical, magical. Okay, right? Hmm? Within a realistic context. Okay. So Maria Celeste says or asks, Professor, so in a magical realism, it is possible for characters to be afraid of the magical elements? Of course. Of course. And that is very realistic. Hmm? That is very realistic. Think about a very old man with enormous wings. Okay, remember the story by Garcia Marquez? Out of the blue, they come across this very old man with enormous wings, right? What happens there is that they're not scared by this individual, right? Even though he resembles an angel or a fallen angel. On the contrary, Garcia Marquez uses that story to attack capitalism and and greed, because people always look for opportunities to make money out of almost anything, so they can fool people, right? And they were able to do it until the Spider Woman appeared. Okay, but you didn't see these people; they were not scared. Okay, but of course it can be. It can be. All right. Okay, let's continue. Um, so let me see if there is another question. Okay. So the skeleton key, as I said, endures a masterclass in atmospheric terror. Its visceral impact amplified through the usage of the story through radio broadcastings or broadcasts last century. Okay, and something similar happened to Orson Welles' The War of Words or something like that. It was an alien invasion taking place on Earth. They used to broadcast the whole novel via radio in the 40s, I think, in the United States, or the 50s, I don't remember. And a lot of people thought it was real. People got scared and really afraid of this alien invasion, and people started running, escaping from the cities and looking for shelter and everything. And they have to come out and explain that it was just a story, not it wasn't real. Okay. The structure of this story goes from the narrator. Jan describes the grueling, isolated existence of this lighthouse. So we have three lighthouse keepers: John, Auguste, and Leclerc. Okay, they were off the coast of the French Guiana. Okay, remember that this was a colony of France, so it is very realistic. Okay. Then a strange derelict ship drifts toward the reef, unleashing a plague of thousands of starving giant rats onto the island. Then you have the visceral, relentless siege. Okay, the rats violent envelop to the lighthouse, attempting to breach the glass and consume everything inside. And finally, you have the physical survival is secured. August and Jane survive, but poor Legleo's mind shatters entirely, leaving permanent emotional trauma. In other words, he became crazy. Okay? Characters, you go from flat to flat. Okay? You have round versus flat. Okay? Legleo, psychologically complex figure whose initial instability, violent devolves into profound permanent trauma. John, the narrator, highly intelligent and relentlessly observant, anchoring the terrifying narrative of reality. And then you have Auguste, who functions predominantly as a stabilizing, supportive presence among or amidst the escalating chaos. Okay, so that's what we have in here, right? The setting, the three skeleton key, that is a solitary lighthouse imprisoned by dangerous, isolated waters. You have the psychological element, that is this feeling of claustrophobic, okay, that is terrifying, completely isolated, escape is impossible. So that amplifies this sense of horror or terror, okay, in the story. There is no way for you to go to escape to, right? You have to stay there and wait for the rest to leave or whatever. The execution, this is how the story is constructed or developed. You have a first-person narrator. In this case, contrary to the other story that was a third-person omniscient narrator, here you have first-person narrator. That is John. He renders the horror immediate, visceral, and intensely personal. Literary style is vivid sensory imagery, clinical realistic descriptions, frenetic action sequences, and suffocating suspenseful pacing. A seamless hybrid of adventure and terror. Also, you have these concepts, how the story can be described as fearful, intense, claustrophobic, desperate, and also suspenseful. All right? Uh, Tools or artifacts of survival. All right? You have a visceral embodiment of uncontrollable fear, primal chaos, and the relentlessly destructive force of nature. Okay? You cannot escape nature, right? Then you have the fragile illusion of protection, that is civilization and human security, but meaning we can die at any moment, my friends. Life is short, and we don't know when we are going to die. Take, for instance, what occurred 2 days ago. The highway Florencio del Castillo from San Jose to Cartago, with these two guys who were driving, and then one of them crashed into the other, and they had an argument, and then one was going to attack the other with a machete, and then the other took out a gun and killed the guy, accidentally or not. I mean, human life, it's very fragile, right? That the guy with the gun, he didn't even he didn't even shoot the other guy with the purpose of the idea of killing the guy. He shot him in his leg, but with such bad luck that caused the other guy to die. Okay, and also we have the absolute inescapable isolation and profound human helplessness. Okay, themes in this story: survival against nature, the limits of human endurance, fear and psychological trauma, and human vulnerability. Okay. Um, Now we have diagnosing the darkness. How this sense of terror, horror is created. Okay. You have suspense and horror. Both narrates both stories, right? Narrate masterfully escalate psychological tension toward terrifying, unescapable climaxes. Okay, you have isolated settings. One in the remote countryside, and the other one in a remote lighthouse. Okay, in the ocean. Okay, that establishes geography as something that make or shows human as vulnerable. Okay, we have the fear of the unknown also. The mystical ambiguity of fate, that is the Po, mirrors the overwhelming chaotic anomaly of the rat invasion in the ski. Okay, then you have enduring consequences. Survival is not a victory. The characters' emotional lives are irrevocably altered by lasting scars. In The Monkey's Paw, the song is dead, and I'm very sure that both the mother and the father, they are left with a trauma. Okay, they become traumatized for the rest of their lives, right? And in Three Skeleton Key, well, you have Legleo who becomes crazy, right? So they have enduring, both texts show enduring consequences. And then finally, you have the psychological impact in the two stories, okay? Both texts ruthlessly dissect, cut how extreme fear fractures human behavior and mental stability, okay? You have this table that compares the two stories. Nature of horror in The Monkey's Paw, you have supernatural and mystical. In Three Skeleton Key, it is more realistic but in more psychological. Narrative architecture, narrator, in this case, Monkey's Paw, third person omniscient, Three Skeleton Key, first person immediate. The sources of peril, okay, or chaos, destruction, death. The Monkey's Paw, internal hubris, okay, greed and interfering with fate. You cannot change your fate. If you dare to change your fate, something negative is going to happen to you. Remember, this is what occurred in Frankenstein, right? Dr. Victor Frankenstein wants to play the role of God, and he wants to change fate, right? But at the end, it was a disaster. In Three Skeleton Key, you have external forces, nature, and the extreme survival scenarios. These are the ones that bring death and chaos and destruction in the story. Thematic axis, okay, destiny and the devastating price of human desire for the Monkey's Paw, and also Three Skeleton Key, endurance and the fracturing of the human mind. And finally, you have the resolution in both stories. In one, it is ambiguous, okay, silent and mysterious strategy. We don't know what happened at the end. It is open. And Three Skeleton Key is definite physical survival, but plagued by lasting mental trauma, especially in the case of Lake Leo. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions about that. Okay. No? No questions? Is it clear, my
Yes,
friends?
Professor, all clear.
Okay, good. Let me see what time it is. We still have 12 minutes. Okay, well, let's hurry up. Let's stay until 8:25, please, so we can cover the other story, the other three stories, okay? I also prepare a presentation for you, okay? And these are Thank You, Man, and the other two are I forgot, Snow and Cranes, okay? I hope you have read the stories, my friends. Okay, so let's get started. We have here topics of like identity, conflict, and compassion. Okay, so let's see. The first one that we have is Thank You, Man. Okay, Snow, actually. This starts with Snow. Okay, you have the author that is Puerto Rican Julia Alvarez. Okay, this is a story and that is part of a book that is called How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents. And this story is told in kind of a backing or backwards chronological order. It starts like at the end, and then it goes back until the beginning of the family and the immigrants and all that. So it's a very interesting book. Okay. Well, she was born in Dominican Republic in 1950. It deals with the concept of displacement, that is, migrants, people who migrated into the United States with her family, fleeing the political tensions of the Rafael Trujillo, that was a dictator in Dominican Republic last century. The literary focus is the exploration of immigration, bicultural identity, language, memory, and belonging. Because maybe this really happened to her. And I know the ending, if you read the story, you're going to find it, or maybe you found it very funny, right? But that can be realistic, okay? Snow is an excerpt from her widely acclaimed novel, How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents, okay? So you remember the story, right? We have a young girl that is in school, the first year living in the United States, and we are in the middle of the Cold War. If you don't know what the Cold War is, that period of time after World War II up to 1990, more or less, so it was like a period of 40 years in which the war was totally divided, segregated, fractured into two parts. The part for like commanded by the United States, and the other section commanded by the Soviet Union. Okay, now Russia. But at that time, it was called the Soviet Union, and then it also included many other countries like Ukraine, uh, uh, I don't know, Czechia, well, many, not Czechia, no, but other countries. There were many countries. And after the Cold War came to an end with the Perestroika and Mikhail Gorbachev in 1989, these other countries also became, or nations or states or whatever, became independent. Okay, so that is the context for you to know. Uh, During this time, people were really scared and afraid that at any moment, either the United States or the Soviet Union could start attacking the other country through or the use of atomic bombs. So that could mean the end of life as we know it. Okay, so that is where the story takes place. Okay. So the setting and the context, New York Catholic school during winter, set against the Cold War, as I said to you, and especially the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. This event, the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, is very important because the United States used to have a plane, a warplane that was known as the U-2, like the rock band, okay, the same name, U-2, and Cuba at that time was part of the Soviet Union, together with Nicaragua and other countries. And they attacked and destroyed one of these planes, but it was an accident. But rumor has it that that day, the president of the United States was about to press the button and, you know, uh, send the atomic bombs. So that is why this incident is it's very important because the whole world was in fear. Okay. Um, then also has immigrant anxiety that is heightened by fears of political violence. That is all the different dictatorships in Latin America. Remember, last class we talked about that with the use of magical realism, right? That was a way of escaping or also presenting in a different way the negative aspects of the dictatorships in Latin America. Now, the point of view of the narrator, first person narration by Yolanda, there's a girl. The tone is reflective, innocent, and yet slightly tense, capturing the child's cultural disorientation. She had never seen the snow. Okay, that's why the story is called Snow. Characters, Yolanda, that is the young girl, her teacher, okay, and then you have political violence and psychologically scarce children, and yet compassion aids adaptation. Here, the teacher or the role of the teacher is very important because she is the one who brings compassion. It's a compassionate guide, like the teacher, uh, to the girl. Okay? And the style of the author, of Julia Alvarez, is simple but yet emotionally powerful. That uses a child's limited vocabulary to underscore profound geopolitical, fear. Remember that this girl just came from Dominican Republic. She didn't know how to speak English. Structure, plot structure, exposition. Yolanda, a new Dominican immigrant, struggles to learn American costumes. Rise in action. She notices some familiar white flakes falling outside the classroom window. Climax. A girl starts screaming, bomb, bomb, and goes beneath the chair, the desk. That's the climax. The falling action is when the teacher gentle explains the nature of snow. And the resolution is when Yolanda experiences a gradual adaptation and understanding of her safe new environment. Yeah, I don't know if that is safe anymore, but let's say. Symbols. You have the snowflake, okay? The initial meaning is deep-seated anxiety, trauma, and political violence. It's falling. It's like a metaphor of the falling bombs. Okay, so you see the connection here, right? It is also the meaning transforms, right? And then it becomes a representation of innocence, discovery, and the deep internal desire for cultural safety and peace. And finally, you have central themes: immigration fear, trauma, identity, and language. Okay. Let's see what time is. Okay, 7:17. Next story is Cranes. Okay, this is written by Hwang Sun Won, and deals with the conflict between the two Koreas. Okay, um, so you have a author that is recognized as one of Korea's most important modern writers. This context is that survives the Japanese occupation, in this case, the author, and the devastation of the Korean War. Okay, two conflicts, right? Literary focus, the human impact of war on ordinary people, exploring emotions, memory, and national division and suffering. And finally, you have a central philosophical idea or concept. Frequently explore how humanity and connection persist in times of brutal ideological conflict. Okay? At the end of the day, we all are humans. We have to help each other. We need to care for each other. Okay? Um, the questions, we're not going to see them. The architecture of divided loyalties. Okay? Setting the rural Korea near the 38th parallel during the Korean War. If you like Korean doramas in Netflix, probably you have watched or seen one that is called Crash Landing on You. It's really nice. I really liked it. And in that series, what you're going to see something like this, right? A rich girl from South Korea lands by accident, okay, uh, in North Korea, where the guards or police officers or whatever are, and then she is kind of captured. But you can see the differences. So the 38th parallel is very important, okay? You also have a landscape where families and friends are forcibly divided by ideological borders. This is very similar to what happened in Ireland between the Republic of Ireland, that is independent and Catholic, and Northern Ireland, that is part of the United Kingdom, and they are Protestant. Okay, and they always have this conflict, but now no. But in the past, up to the 1990s, another series that you can watch to have a better idea of this is my favorite TV series of all time, that is called Derry Girls. Okay, the regards takes place in 1993, I think, with this peace process between both our countries, Ireland and Northern Ireland. So take a look at that if you feel like after the semester is over. Okay, the tone is nostalgic, tense, and ultimately compassionate. Okay, you have narrator that is a third person limited narration that is focused on Sam characters. Sam, South Korea soldier, wrestling with duty, and then you have Takshi that is accused a communist prisoner. Thing is that both of them were really close friends when they were little. The conflict is strictly internal. That is friendship, because they used to be friends, versus political loyalty. Now the countries are separated, divided by political ideologies. So what can I do? Do I listen to my part that says, my human part that says, we used to be best friends, I'm going to save him, or do I follow my leader and put this political loyalty into practice? The message: human relationships and shared childhood memories are fundamentally stronger than forced ideological divisions. Again, the concept of memory, just like in snow, memory plays a very important role. Okay. Exposition, you have Sansang escorts his childhood friend Takshi, who is accused of supporting communism. Race in action, walking through their old village, the landscape triggers vivid childhood memories. The climax, Samsan remembers a specific shared moment of capturing and subsequently freeing a crane together. I don't know about Korea, maybe Carla can help us with this, but in Japan, the cranes became a symbol of peace, okay, and freedom and humanity, right? So every year there is a day in Japan in which they make these paper cranes, origami, and remembering that act. Okay, it was a girl who was dying, and while she was dying at the hospital, she came up with the idea of creating or making these paper cranes in origami style as a way to, you know, celebrate that, and then it became a symbol for Japan. Anyway, so they remember that time when they were little kids and best friends, and they liberated a crane together. Falling action, overcome by profound nostalgia and shared humanity, and finally, the resolution when Song-san deliberately allows Tokshi to escape into the fields. Symbols. You have the cranes. Literal meaning, a bear captured and freed by children. Metaphorical meaning, freedom, peace, hope for reconciliation, and the longing to preserve human dignity above forced loyalty. Central themes or topics, friendship beyond ideology, war and division, or freedom. Okay? And the last story, we're going to see it in next class on Tuesday. Okay? That is Thank You Man, together with the song that I told you to listen to, the video today. We are going to be working on that on on Tuesday next class, okay? Don't forget the online graded activity, please. And also, as I said before, I'm going to be sending you your exam number 1 tonight. I hope. There are still like 6 to finish. So like before 11 o'clock, I will send you the exams. So check your university account email to see the link. Okay. I don't know if you have any questions or complaints. Minor, Alonso, you stayed for a second
Yes, sure.
to see what we are going to do. Okay. Valeska, Carla, Evelyn, Anthony, Maria Celeste, and Mari. I don't know if you have questions. Is it
No,
clear?
Professor, all clear.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Sorry for the problems at the beginning today, but well, luckily we were able to cover most of the material for today. Have a nice rest of the day, an excellent weekend, and see you on Thursday. Carla, you were going to say something.
I was about to say that. No worries, Professor. Everything can happen in a day.
Yeah, I know, but today was bad hair day. Okay, thank you very much. See you.
Goodbye,
Bye.
Professor.
Bye.